The ripples' reflections are cast on the railing's white-painted slats by a sun so bright, shadows acquire depth easily confused for heft. An airplane's wash as the sky anticipates, but puddles the size of saucers, the ripples have 2, maybe 3 perfect rings before reaching the extent of each minor depression in the warped wood. We naively believe there are no limits to life, dreams, talent, save the universe's end, which was foreseen in collapse, the pull of matter too strong to overcome. Yet even the galactic specks we glimpse through intently focused glass now flee from us faster than ever. It was only in the third act then we realized we weren't assigned a soliloquy. We were never still or spotlit long enough to find the mark, but instead shuffled on and off like players in a massive 9-hour repertory production whose dramatis personae lists more characters and actors to play them than patrons who attended, are attending, or will attend the not unsurprisingly limited run. Still, we recite our handful of lines with cringe-worthy brio, rattling the seats in the small theater's back row. It's the best we can do. Besides, our parents, though they know there are, in fact, limits, have known much longer than we have our precise ones, are there. They'll grow tired, sneak out at intermission for a bite at the Chili's they spied down the street on the way into the theater, but by then our wives will have arrived. They're tired too, but in a different way. For them we go back on, but the few lines we had we've delivered, and all there is now is to linger upstage, watch other players enter and exit, the puddles catch the runoff strip, the universe expand through the wrong end of a telescope. The second pair is called Cheap Kitchen Matches. Why in winter's depth would you need to use the garden hose, which, if after using it you don't drain, will freeze? Buried for months under inches of snow, the roses, peonies, and hibiscus don't need water, you don't own a car, and if you did, wouldn't wash it in temperatures at which you could lose your fingers. There is the water heater, which is coughing up rust. It needs to be flushed, and if you didn't, as I bade you drain it the last time you used it, the hose will have frozen, forcing you to flush the tank into alternating buckets, which could take all afternoon. You never listen to me. You complain when I tell you I told you so, but you don't listen. If you did, I wouldn't have to emulate my mother. Still, as our worlds shrink, it's natural, like the dictator of a once stable country caught in an inflationary death spiral, to assert control over the dwindling rest. Ensconced in the presidential palace, you emerge, albeit rarely, to deliver the odd 6-hour harangue. As grain stores drop to famine-like levels, international bodies monitor the situation. But with crises elsewhere, intervention is out of the question. Sanctions, as if they worked, are more likely, but it's help you need and don't know how to ask for. Answers to casual questions are perfunctory, efforts to smuggle information to the outside world feeble, your existence and the incessant need to comment on it, to be both here and there, though there, another's here, is clearly a better place to be, brimming with resent. Look at yourself, stretched flat on the damp floor, reaching in the tank's bowels for the valve to put a match to, and relight the pilot you extinguished to flush the rust. How many have you struck only to have cold drafts from the open cellar door blow them out? How great is your fear the ignited gas will race your arm's length and engulf it in blue flame? How much greater still the fear you won't find the valve at all, that match after match will simply burn itself to black futility. This next pair is linked by my childhood best friend, Chris Spillane, although in every other way they really have nothing in common with one another. The first one's called Homefront. At the Veterans Hospital, medevacs came and went, and I volunteered to bring patients from their rooms to hear Mass in the small chapel near the entrance. You see, the chaplain never delivered sermon, whereas up at the parish church I'd be stuck in a pew listening to Father Hogan explain in painstaking detail the relevancy to my daily life of the week's gospel reading. After the truncated service, in a field behind the hospital, we'd play football, my brothers and I, and the guys from the block, the Walshes and Spillanes, whose youngest, Chris, would for a long time remain my best friend. And once, in a corner of the field, we built a crude fort on a dirt mound the hospital had dug up to lay down a parking lot. We were too young to know that as we fought each other for control of the fort, the helicopters we stopped to watch land and take off carried real soldiers, wounded in real wars. This one's called Come to the Window. The ice encrusting it is melting, and you can look out over the snow-covered roofscape, sparkling in the sun. Hear icicles snap as they fall from the gutter, and the snow the trees caught in last night's storm as it drops with a thud to the fire escape. At 8 to play, I half expect Chris Bellane's waiting in the alley, though he years ago moved away, and as friends we've left the other behind. Little senses seemed as simple as making angels in a fresh bed of snow. The evening we hit with snowballs a passing car's windshield, the driver got out and followed us home between Banks' tolerance spots and Chris or I. Our parents lectured us about throwing things at cars, but never explained how much more dangerous words are. And now how I wish you might as easily as the window this ice, or the windshield that snow, let slide from you what I said last night. These two I wrote roughly about the same time, and they have a kind of similar voice to them. I call it more like my Robert Lowell voice rather than my John Ashbery voice. The first one, and I apologize if anybody here is from Iceland, I am pronouncing it as Eyjafjallajökull, which is the volcano that erupted in the spring. The first rays catch antennae tips of glass and steel towers, drifting on offshore breezes, glinting like barbed wire or a plane banking toward dawn. Though air traffic's down because a volcano erupted half an ocean away, a gull cries out. Somewhere another answers, and intermittently I hear the amplified hum of a worn tire's tread as it runs over grooved pavement the city's taking too long to finish with blacktop. Here you take nature where you find it. New light on steel, new light on glass, lichen obscuring deceased names on headstones in the cemetery at the bottom of the hill, even rats, which, though their habits aren't that far removed from chipmunks or squirrels, occupy a lower rung on nature's aesthetic ladder. I once gave myself a mohawk with nothing but clippers and a hand mirror. On the sides, I sheared to the skin and managed to turn myself into something akin to a prisoner of war. Of course, then I weighed all of $1.50 soaking wet. I was reminded of this when a skunk moved in under the porch. Nature's punk rockers, skunks stink, only emerge at night and wear white striped hair, which they clearly dye themselves in the mirror, spiked. But such is the desiccation, I'd follow it into its squatter's lair with nothing but a flashlight to get a better look. These things I don't know or can't do. The names of flowers, distinguishing one type of deciduous tree from another, and keeping the difference between a swallow and a sparrow straight. I once confused slug and sloth in a poem I too hastily submitted for publication. In the summer I worked as a counselor at a camp with a horseback riding ring. I couldn't quite get the cantering down. Like a language, if nature isn't learned early, it may never come. About this I'm sad, that I'm past my sell-by date and the city is the only habitat I've ever known. I'm comfortable in neither a boat nor a tent, neither climbing a mountain nor swimming too far from shore. And as if I needed a prompt to remind me life's been little more than asphalt and bald tires, flights were grounded by a volcano erupting half an ocean away.